During this session, Jeff and I discussed the essential nature of good business sense, software platforms, the essential nature of business change, transparency, ethics, and the difference between a good match and a bad one.
With that, I know specialty dental brands, they operate with a few different platforms. They don't force everybody onto one platform, but they do want that platform to be cloud based. They want to be able to pull information that they need to see to so that they create like a nice dashboard so that they can see what's happening across the organization. But in order to do that efficiently, they do need practices to be on a practice management platform that is cloud based, or at least is not too difficult to access. We were using a platform that was cloud based, but it wasn't one that they had even used before, and they've allowed us to sort of stick with that. It'll be a better system. I mean, these cloud based systems, they're typically better options than what people are currently using, even though you may have been using something for 20 plus years or something. Your people will have to get used to, there'll be some training. There are some things that might be different, but also good. They're not going to change to something that's worse.
This touches on an interesting psychological parameter that everybody has, and that humans are creatures of habit.
Mhm.
People do not like change
Right.
at all. And
Mhm.
even a change for the better sometimes can be stressful, because Jeff said to me, Jerry, you have to change that. My initial hit reaction, my knee jerk reaction is, well, what's wrong with it? Well, you didn't say there was anything wrong with it. You said the word change.
Right.
And change to the human mind connotates that something is wrong. And I
Mhm.
think that anybody, regardless of who you might partner with, if you're listening to this section of the podcast, you have to be ready to embrace the change, and so does your entire team.
Mhm.
Now, every it seems, Jeff, that every single office, practice, business that we look at, there are team members being underworked and overpaid. It seems like there's almost never an exception to that. I don't know about
Yeah.
when Michael Schwartz and Hunter, when your practice was acquired. So I'm not saying that happened with you, but I know with all the others that I was involved in, that was the case. And the comment from a business sense is, yeah, that's interesting, but that's not how you run an efficient business or a successful business. You cannot have people that are over paid and underworked. Do you have a comment about that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, yes, for our organization at least, none of our doctor compensation changed. None of our, I don't think any staff compensation changed at all. I mean, we had, because we were, 20, 21 locations, we already had some middle management, and we had some regional managers and things like that. And so I'm looking at those. I'm looking at everybody across the whole board. Nothing changed. That is a big concern, I think, when people are considering joining a group, is, what's going to happen to compensation. And for the doctors, at least in our case, like, it hasn't changed. I know others where sometimes they can play with that a little bit. So if a doctor wants a larger nugget for his practice, especially dental brands is willing to do that, but then they have to maybe have a doctor pay moving forward that might be, lower than what they wanted. Or if they want like a reasonable nugget but want to keep their pay level where it is, they can do that. So there's some of that happens in the negotiation phase. But for what you say in terms of like team members, yeah, I mean, there's a reasonable range for every position in dentistry. And if you have people who are getting paid outside, above and beyond that reasonable range, and it's because they've been with you 30 years and they're your sister-in-law or something, that that may change a little bit, but I'll tell you this, even in the ones that I thought, I've seen some already that for other groups that joined where I thought their people were a little bit outside of the range, and they actually, didn't change it all that much. So, um, but the expectation should be there, and I think most dentists who are considering this probably in the back of their mind are already thinking about that. That's a real possibility. If you have, an assistant who's making $150,000 a year, you probably ought to come to grips with the reality that that's going to change, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Well, could that person go and make $150,000 a year somewhere else? Probably not. In which case, they also need to be okay with a pay range that reflects, their talents and skills and training, but also what the market dictates for that position. Dental Brands doesn't go in and immediately cut everyone's pay. They're not one of these groups that's looking to squeeze the practice to get the most out of that individual practice. They're going after healthy, independent practices because they don't want to have to do that. So they're already efficient. They're going after practices that are already doing a lot of the right things. So anyway, that's not something. I know it's a fear that a lot of potential dentists or partners could have going into a partnership that immediately across the board they're going to attack everybody's pay, but that hasn't been my experience, and in the history of specialty dental brands, it hasn't been their experience.
If you're someone listening to this podcast and you're already thinking, oh, I got a few of those that are underworked and overpaid, okay, that's not smart. You
Right.
know that you shouldn't be doing that. But as I said, humans are creatures of habit. So basically, what you're allowing those people to do, people who arrive late for the job and leave early, that establishes a threat. That is a threat to your business. That is a threat to your family, and it's nothing short of it. It's a threat to your retirement plan. It's a threat to your children and your security to allow that type of behavior. So it's not right. It's not smart. And yet I've seen people push back when a corporate, and I don't mean specialty dental brands specifically, I mean other consulting things that I've done where I've
Right.
had to have almost a sit down psychotherapy session with the owners and say, look, what you're doing here
Yeah.
is you're in the eighth grade.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, they're not doing their people any favors other than the immediate, like, you know, outside of normal pay. I mean, doctors, dentists were nice people. I get it. I understand how some of that happens over time where, people ask for a raise and you just kind of keep giving it, or you do the automatic raise. I mean, I was personally never one for that, but I know how it happens and why it happens, and it's why after 30 years you could have somebody making $150,000 a year at a job that maybe should be, 60,000 a year.
in these presentations I've done called the exceptional office, where I'm talking to the entire team, I ask the team a question. Let's imagine that this is your business, not those owners right there, not the doctors. It is your business. Or let's say it's your son or your daughter's business. Would you tell your daughter as a business owner, any business, not a dental business, any business, would you tell your daughter, I'm going to tell you a smart thing to do. On the anniversary of that team member, employee, on the anniversary, the day they were born into the office, see, the day that you hired them, you are automatically going to give them a raise. Or you're automatically going to give an end of the year bonus, whether they deserve it or not. Whether the business has done better or not, people are going to get these raises and bonuses. Do you think that that's a smart idea? Now, when I say that to the entire team and I make them answer me, I
Mm-hmm.
say to them, now really, I want you to nod your head. What is that a smart business move? Well, when I forced them to do this, they say, well, no, that's not smart. What was amusing, Jeff, is there was one presentation I did. It was had nothing to do with specialty dental brands. It was someone contracted with me to come in and do this exceptional office for his entire team, which was a substantial orthodontic office. Well, there was one, I'll say, young person in the room when I said, "Do you think that that's the right thing to do?" And this young person said, did like this. I said, "Wait, stop, hold it. You just nodded your head.
Uh,
Everybody else said no. You think that that's a good business move to give people a raise once a year, whether they deserve it or not, whether the businesses, did they make themselves more valuable?" I said, "You think that's the right thing to do?" And this person said, "Yes, I do." I said, "How can that make business sense?" So you think that should happen to everybody in the office? That everybody, you and everybody else, should make more money? She said, yes. Ooh, the person said yes.
yeah. Yes.
And I said, "How about the doctor that owns this business? It's a one doctor owner."
Mhm.
Do you know what this person said? "Oh, yeah, I think the doctor should get more too." I said, "But the business didn't make more money." And
Where's it coming from?
she was like a goose in a new world.
Uh,
The poor thing had no concept of what was going on. Well, of course, afterwards, I asked the doc uh, what she thought of this because it was a female doc who owned this orthodontic business, and she said, "Well, I've been wondering about her for a while. She is not really a good fit."
yeah.
Now, if you're listening to the podcast and this is all making sense to you, you might want to take a step forward, talk with DSOs, talk with us if you think you're a good match. Now, Jeff, who do you think is not a good match for us?
Um, I mean, I used to think that probably I could just sort of categorize and say everybody like this is maybe not a good match or is a good match. To be honest, I think I would say this: if it's probably not a good match if you have big plans. And when I say big plans for your practice, that's like maybe your practice is worth $1 million today, and in 2 years you're going to make it worth $10 million. If you have big plans to do that, and I'm saying that's like possible to do. It's just that you got to have sources of funding to grow that big. You've got to have some other. But if you have that, if you're planning on doing that, then yeah, if it were me, I would probably do that first and then partner. Um, so that kind of person might not be a good fit. And if your practice is maybe struggling, you're in it 1 or 2 years, and you probably need to get it to a pretty good healthy level to make it make sense for you. Um, Other than that, I would say there's a place for probably everybody else.
Yeah, I think if you don't really put the patients first, I mean,
Well,
if you're
yeah, I
listening
mean,
to the podcast, and this almost goes without saying, right, Jeff? But for
yeah, I
us,
mean, I'm talking about like, if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, I mean, I'm taking as a given that, you're providing excellent patient care, you're taking care of your patients, you're taking care of your employees, your team members. I mean, there are some basic things that I'm saying
yeah,
should
I
be
agree.
outside of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like that to be up front that we're not interested in somebody who is seeing phantom dentistry, imagining things that don't exist, or frankly, from an orthodontic standpoint, if you're an orthodontist thinking, well, come on, everybody needs braces. Um, if that's kind of what's going through your mind, you might look for an organization other than ours. We tend to be Michael Schwartz, our CEO, has had a long-term philosophy because I've known him nearly 10 years. Is his outlook on thing is always transparency, always.
Hmm.
Nothing is hidden ever.
Right.
Uh, the It's called an open book philosophy. There's actually a name for it.
Hmm.
He patterns it very heavily after the Zingerman's philosophy of open book and transparency. Put the patients in the chairs. Get the patients into the office with ethical marketing, with ethical employment, with ethical behavior. Set an example, but get the people in the office and have ethical doctors and ethical team members, and the rest will take care of itself. It is completely wrong to see things, see restorations that you say need to be replaced, but they really don't, or see areas that should just be observed for restoration and become overly aggressive. That is who we're not. Do you agree with all of that?
Oh yeah. In fact, when we were considering before we closed the deal on this, when we were considering specialty dental brands, I'll tell you, some of our doctors knew who Jerry Sampson was, and when they looked into specialty dental brands and saw that Jerry Sampson was a part of that organization, it was like a done deal. They're like, I know, some of these guys knew Jerry personally, through the years, just through some of your educational endeavors, and they said, I'm sold. Like, if Jerry's involved, then and that it speaks. I mean, it speaks to you personally, which I think is like a great compliment, but it also speaks to the organization. I mean, this is an organization that has education, ethics, really at its core. Okay, this is an organization that cares about the patient, is going to put the patient first. Jerry Sampson isn't going to be aligned with something that doesn't do that.
Well,
So,
that I don't take that compliment lightly. I've often thought for the last few years, 5 or 10 years, probably more like 10, there's nothing more important to me, Jeff. Nothing is more important to me than the respect of my peers. So what you just said, I'll be my the third eye, the eye that sees and talks to me in my head. I'll remember you said that for a long time. Thank you very much.
yeah.
Well, if you're sincerely, thank you. If you have other questions, um, there will be contact information here for you. Personally, am available to speak with someone who has further questions. I don't want to volunteer Jeff and his time. Jeff,
Oh, I'm
how do you
happy to.
feel?
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, if anybody has questions or, I mean, I've been where they're at. You have too, Jerry. So certainly, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk anytime.
Our main objective is for everyone that's you listening to the podcast, making decisions, as well as for us to get a good fit to start with. We don't want to. We do everything we can to not make a mistake, just as you should. Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for taking your time to speak and explain all these things. I'm delighted that we're in the same organization. Actually, I've felt that way from the get-go because we really didn't know. Tap the pause button, make note of our email addresses, and let's arrange a time for conversation.